This whole time, we've been talking about the Montreal Canadiens and their very well-received, earth-shattering trade on day one of the 2025 NHL Entry Draft, where they had sent over their 16th and 17th overall picks in the draft, as well as Emil Heineman to the New York Islanders for right-handed defenseman Noah Dobson. We've made a bunch of videos just talking about that trade and the context around it, how Patty Waugh may or may not have influenced the tides that be, which eventually led to Dobson getting traded in the first place. But what I wanted to talk about in this video instead was just how things are starting to look so much better for Montreal. The more and more we learn about some of the assets that the Canadiens let go of in that trade. What I wanted to refer to was a video where Martin Lepoint went out there and spoke to Anthony Martineau. This was on TVA Sports' Twitter account, and it will be linked in the description. It's a 5-minute video interview after what was day 2 of the NHL Entry Draft. But as we are all familiar with, Martin Lepoint is the Montreal Canadiens Director of Player Development, and he went out there and said this. The Montreal Canadiens, with their very first pick in the draft, which was second-round territory, they drafted Alexander Zharovsky. But he was ultimately Montreal's first-round pick. What exactly does that mean? Well, let's head over to a tweet made by Marco D'Amico, also on day 2 of the 2025 NHL Entry Draft, that goes out there and explains even more context. This is what he ended up saying on Twitter. Martin Lepoint confirms what we had heard from scouts. The Montreal Canadiens had Alexander Zharovsky ranked at 16/17 on their internal draft list. And that's it. That's a very simple piece of information. It doesn't change much about what the player is or how good he is, how many points he can get. That doesn't change any of that. What it does change, however, is the way that we can view the Montreal Canadiens draft. Because, you know, we've been making videos this entire time. We made a video for every single Montreal Canadiens draftee that they had in this year's entry draft. I admittedly lost out on a bunch of views because the Canadiens did not draft in the first round. Of course, you know, you can say otherwise, that the Canadiens made a trade, and there is a video that we made about that trade, and there were the videos that we made leading up to the trade, and all the rumors about Noah Dobson, so you can say it was kind of equal 50-50. But the Montreal Canadiens had a bunch of draft picks in the later rounds, and we made videos on all of them. The Alexander Zharovsky video was one that I don't think actually got the most attention. It's kind of funny, it wasn't the most viewed video, but it was one that did see a lot of Canadiens fans pay attention to it, because it was the first pick the Habs had in the draft, and now we're starting to see why it is the Montreal Canadiens traded up in order to draft Zharovsky at the beginning of the second round. You don't ever seem to remember the trades of the draft picks themselves in these drafts, but Montreal did go out there and trade 2 later picks to go up to the beginning of this round, wherein they selected Zharovsky with the 34th overall pick. This is why, if the Montreal Canadiens evaluated Zharovsky as 16th or 17th overall on their own internal draft board, then this is an absolute steal. The guy that they wanted, the guy that they would have been able to target at 16-17, is available. And I know you can say, all right, well, that doesn't guarantee that if the Montreal Canadiens had Zharovsky 16-17, if they kept their 16th and 17th picks and they didn't trade for Dobson, would they have taken Zharovsky in the first round? That's the implication here. I get that you can say, hey, wait, Zharovsky, his consolidated ranking was in the 40s. A bunch of outlets had him in the 40, 50, some even in the 80 range, so it's not like this guy was, like, totally unanimously up in there in the draft, right? So would the Canadiens have drafted him 16th, 17th? You can definitely say it's not guaranteed, but you can also argue the contrary. You can say if Montreal had Zharovsky number 16 on their draft board, you can make the argument that what if the first 15 names that went in the draft just so happened to be the same ones Montreal had 1 through 15? It's not guaranteed that if the Habs kept 16 and 17, they would have drafted Zharovsky. Maybe they had Victor Eklund ranked higher than him, or maybe they had somebody else that was available 16, 17 ranked higher than Zharovsky, like a Justin Carbonneau or a Cole Reshny. But the fact that this guy was evaluated by Montreal in that range in the first place, it does give a lot more excitement and hope for what this Canadiens team just accomplished 3 days ago in talking about the trade itself. How they were able to get rid of their 2 draft picks and Emil Heineman for Noah Dobbs, and they got a top defenseman in exchange. Yet, in the actual draft itself, they were still able to draft the player that they might have had very high interest in at the 16th or 17th overall spot. The fact that they had him evaluated there is so important, and I get that you could also say, okay, maybe he's just trying not to fan the flame. Martone is getting that interview, Lapointe is just saying all the vanilla stuff that are going to make Canadiens fans feel more comfortable, and it'll allow them to freak out a little bit more. You can say that that's the case here. I would not necessarily say that it's totally out of the question. Okay, he says the really good fan servicey thing. Oh yeah, this guy that we had at the 34th overall spot, we actually had him ranked higher, like 17. We might have been able to draft him if we kept our first round picks. Like, that's a super vanilla and fan servicey thing to say. But if it's true, if that is legitimately where the Canadiens evaluated Zharovsky at in this draft class, then the Montreal Canadiens might have just gotten themselves a first round top 20 caliber guy with the 34th overall pick in the second round. This is a player who has all the skill in the world as a Russian winger, as we had said, the next Andrei Kuzmenko, if you wanted to say that. And now, he's going to be in an organization where he was watching Ivan Demidov debut with just a few months ago, and there's probably going to be a lot of fanfare here. You know, it's kind of funny because Montreal loves Russian players. Remember Ilya Kovalchuk just a few years ago? Kovalev, you can say. Do you want to say that Canadiens fans loved him? Okay, we can roll with that for now. Then I remember, Nikita Sherbak. Not a good example. Alexander Romanov, there you go. Habs fans liked him, right? Demidov, he is the new poster boy for Montreal Canadiens hockey in the future, and then you have Zharovsky, whom Canadiens fans have already started to clamor behind, and we know this because for the past 3 days on Elite Prospects, Alexander Zharovsky has been the #1 trending name on the website the entire time. And as I speak into this microphone, he only recently got taken over by Matthew Schaefer, but he's still there in the top of the list. So this is a very popular player now. Montreal Canadiens fans are excited. They're seeing skilled Russian hockey make its way over to Montreal. And the newest player of that archetype comes in the form of a guy the Habs had ranked so highly that they might have even taken him if they still had their 16th and 17th overall picks. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Alexander Zharovsky and how this situation just gets so much better for the Montreal Canadiens. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.